Hello and welcome to the Pick Six podcast, where the wind comes sweeping down the plains, as it has been all week around here. I don't think it's going to be that way on Saturday for the spring game, but we've got a lot to get into today. I'm Evan Bland. This is Sam McKewon, Jimmy Watkins, here to dish, I suppose, on another busy week in Nebraska athletics. We've got the spring game Saturday. The event itself is fascinating. We'll get into that. Men's basketball made an assistant hire. It's a big home weekend for Nebraska baseball. But I think, maybe the most interesting part about the weekend to me is the recruiting potential that goes into this thing. And Nebraska is set to have a really strong recruiting weekend, 2023s, 2024s, even some 2025s, transfer portal. So it should be interesting to see what becomes of that. But I guess before we dive in, how are you guys all doing this week, last week of spring football, before we kind of move on to the next thing?
I think we're all kind of running on the end of our gas tanks here. It's been a long spring spent asking questions about nothing that we've seen, which can drift into repetitiveness, and I don't think that's what any of us show up to work for. So I'm excited to actually see some things this weekend and be able to formulate questions, opinions, observations based on that. How are you, Sam?
I'm good. I was thinking when you were saying the wind sweeps down the plains, I was thinking that song is obviously affiliated with Oklahoma.
Right.
And I was thinking, what is the song affiliated with each state, which we're not going to talk about here on the podcast. But immediately, so I thought of Oklahoma. And then what was the next state I thought of?
Alabama?
No.
Sweet Home Alabama?
California.
Okay.
Hotel California?
Yeah.
Is that where?
Not Hotel California. The Tupac Shakur Snoop Dogg.
California Love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
California Love. No, I'm not going to sing it. Anyway.
That's
why I thought of, that's what I was thinking about over here. That's how my brain works. Yeah, I mean, I understand why they didn't want to have the media around, but at the same time, it'll be good to see football and see some guys in pads throwing the football around. This biggest visit weekend I can remember. It may be a big Vicky weekend too. Maybe there'll be a lot of Vickies there. I don't know. That's what I was about to say. Biggest visitor weekend that they've ever had. They're gonna have like 150 guys, including 25 high-level guys. So this is huge. It's a huge.
Can we handle the sheer volume of sideline meet and greets before the game? That's a lot.
No.
To pull the curtain back a little bit, for Nebraska football on game days, part of our pre-game duties is to go down and say hello to recruits, maybe meet the parents and stuff like that. Yeah, get some phone numbers for follow-up stuff. That's 150 is a very large number.
Yeah, so you always have to sort of figure out the guys that are like the high target players. Dylan Raiola will be possible to miss. Mm-hmm. He'll be there. That'll he's a big deal. O'Shawn Mathis will be hard to miss. He'll be like one of the tallest and probably the best player down there. So that'll be noticeable. Pop Watson is a little smaller. Mm-hmm. He's 6 foot, 175. So we'll have to maybe he won't tower over everybody. So we'll have to find him, but it's going to be a really good weekend. You have to really applaud Vince Guinta for coming in as the director of senior player personnel and getting this thing going, and Sean Dillon and all the people that are there, and Scott too. I mean, Mickey Joseph, Sean Beckton, all those folks. They put together a really good recruiting weekend, and some of what we do this weekend will be obviously covering the game. That's a big deal, but I mean, having all those guys here, building this thing for the future is important. So. That's part of why Nebraska has a spring game, and they don't just have a spring, soiree or half practice or get together. They have the whole thing, and it lasts 2 hours so that they can have a staging ground for this big event. So it's going to be fun. It'll be a little exciting. I want to see what Casey Thompson does. All those things. So it should be one of the more interesting spring games that we've covered recently. Last year was the least interesting spring game I can ever recall, and it was a really underwhelming affair. Remember, they didn't tackle for the first half.
That's right.
Logan Smothers didn't play for 2 quarters. Like, they forgot about him on the sidelines. It was just an underwhelming experience. And I walked away from that thinking, man, this is not, yeah. But I think this one will be a little bit more interesting because there's some more players to talk about that we haven't seen before.
So let's start with the recruiting side of it before we get into the actual game. And Sam, you talked with Vince Guinta, who's spearheading recruiting for Nebraska now in another tour with the Huskers. Like, and we can get into some of the names again if we want to, but like, what have you seen just in terms of like big picture trends in terms of where these guys are coming from, how far out they're recruiting? Clearly, they're going for more quantity this weekend than they typically have at this particular event. I guess
right.
Just what are some things you've noticed about their approach, just even in the last month?
They've been really aggressive in bringing guys in, not only for unofficial visits, but, like for practices and stuff, but also for this tentpole event. I think there's just a little bit of catch-up to do from last year because, as people know, they didn't open the visits up, I think, till June. And so everything was off campus until then. And so, like, I think they just haven't had as many opportunities as some other places. And, of course, Nebraska was going through a bad year last year. And they didn't bring many visitors on campus for the games, which was interesting. And so I think they're playing a little bit of catch-up. I think that's part of it. But they've caught up, and they had a ton of unofficial visitors here in March and in early April. And now, with this weekend, I think this weekend isn't necessarily indicative of where they want to go. I think they want to do a little bit more regional recruiting. But just as an example, you have guys from Sean Beckton's stomping grounds, the Georgia area. You have guys from Mickey Joseph's stomping grounds, which is going to be Louisiana, so Lake Charles, where Mickey's from, and some other places down there. Mickey's actually from Marrero, but Lake Charles, which is down there. So they're going to have some guys up from Louisiana. They've got a couple guys from Texas, which I think is an area where Brian Applewhite wants to be aggressive. And then they've got a lot of regional recruits. I mean, they have a trio or two or three coming from Chicago. They've got two coming from Missouri, one from KC, one from St. Louis. They've got some guys coming from Iowa. They've got obviously Mav Newton going down there, and I could make an argument that Maverick Newton's one of the biggest unofficial visitors there this weekend. Not only because I think he's a good player, but because he's an edge rusher who's 50 miles away and is the son of Danny Newton. So, and you've talked to him, this is a big deal. I mean, they need to get him in the class. So, I think there's a lot of things they're trying to do. I think they've done some groundwork that gets them in position to win more than they did last year, and I suspect that they will. And we'll just see how the plan evolves from here. But there's a ton of 2024 and 2025 kids on campus this weekend from in-state who might be scholarship guys in the future. And this is like kind of a taste, And so I'm fascinated about how they're going to juggle all that, because the thing that Guinta said is everybody's got to have a little bit different experience. So like Dylan Raiola is going to have a very different experience. They need to give him their, as much of a 5-star treatment as they can. He's the number one player in the country in 2024. I don't know if that'll stay the same. Quarterbacks don't usually remain the number one player in the country. It's usually a defensive end or something, but he's a 5-star. And so there's that, and then you've got, local guys, regional guys, and so everything's going to take a little bit different approach. And then you got O'Shawn Maffetz, who you want to join the program right now, next week. Hey, when you graduate from TCU in a few weeks, we'd like you to move up here. So they've got some immediate additions too. So there's a lot of different kinds of prospects who are on campus this weekend. Kind of addressing all those will be really important.
I think it's been. I mean, you kind of mentioned how late last season Nebraska had very few official visitors on campus. It's been interesting to me to see how that recruiting momentum has jolted and just kind of picked up with the arrival of the new staff. I mean, to me, it felt like they were recruiting late last year with the idea that they might not be around after the season ended.
No question. And a lot of them weren't.
Right. And so to see it kind of go from that to, you get these new assistants in, many of them with high-end recruiting resumes like Bill Bush and like Mickey Joseph, and you had Vince Guinta, and now you have this event. It's remarkable to see how far it's come in 3 months where it was. And kind of to your point too, I mean, there's so many different timelines going on here. O'Shawn Mathis is a guy you want to say yes right now. The 2023 guys, you still have a little bit of time with. 2024, 2025, you're just trying to set a little bit of a foundation. So it's fascinating to see kind of all these players on different tracks come in for this singular event this weekend.
I would just like to touch on the fact that we have not called O'Shawn Mathis by his nickname Show Nuff yet, which was in Evan's story about Mathis the other day, which is a delightful nickname. And I love that we have to, as a newspaper, explain what that means in print. So I think the phrasing in Evan's story was "show enough," which is slang for "sure enough," or he's gonna get it done. You have to do that, but it reminds me of like on Jeopardy when the host used to have to read a question about rap lyrics. And you get a very monotone voice reading something that's not supposed to be monotone. I love that sort of stuff. It's a great contrast, a great meeting of different cultures. As far as this weekend, I think, Mathis is the headliner. That's a guy that has proven pass rush pedigree at the Power 5 level. That is tier 1 priority. The rest of them are far below, besides maybe Raiola. But what can really happen with Raiola this weekend? It's like you're just trying to put your best foot forward with Raiola this weekend. You're trying not to scare him off. Is basically the idea, there, right?
But, anytime you've got a player like that on campus, it just heightens the whole thing for all the other visitors. Because they're like, hey, and Raiola was a big time prospect like last fall when he came for the Ohio State game, but he wasn't the number 1 player in the country.
Right. And
On3, I basically designated that yesterday, which I thought was interesting. On3 Sports being a new recruiting service, and again, I mean that he's top 25, I think, for all the other services. Maybe one, it's like 70, but it's just he's now number 1, and so like everybody's gonna be like, oh, this guy's here, like, and they'll just want to meet him, and he'll want to meet them, and like. Nebraska will have it's kind of like when they had the Friday Night Lights camps and Micah Parsons was here, or Buki Radley Hiles, or whomever. It's just I don't think they're gonna all they can do is just maintain the relationship, and ultimately they're gonna have to win football games to land him. Like you can't go into and say, well, we went 6-6 and. We don't know. Like, you got to win. I mean, they got to win more than their share to get in it with a guy like that. But Whipple helps them, I think, there. I think, Mark Whipple is the first guy who you can really say, this guy knows how to do it and get it done. And Scott could say that a little bit. He's like, Scott could plausibly say, I recruited Justin Herbert. That's true, but he didn't really coach Justin Herbert. Whipple can say, I coached Kenny Pickett and I coached Ben Roethlisberger and all the rest. It's a big deal.
To borrow another term that we may have to explain in a newspaper, there's a clout associated with these kids being here. The fact that Dylan Raiola, it's obviously partially due to family ties, but the fact that he is considering Nebraska closely enough to go to their spring game will mean something to the other kids who are visiting for the spring game. That matters.
It does.
Yeah, no doubt. So they'll be here to see. I mean, there will actually be a game that occurs, or we presume there will be a game. We haven't seen the actual format of the spring game yet. I know they're a little short, especially on the defensive line, so we'll see what the format is. But there actually will be athletic performance occurring on the field.
Football or something football adjacent.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So, and we've had kind of iterations of this conversation before, but like after weeks and weeks of talk and hearing what coaches and players think, like what to you can maybe be crystallized, confirmed, or maybe you have a different opinion. What are you looking forward to seeing and sort of confirming or reconciling from what you heard throughout spring?
Tom and I talked about this yesterday on his press pass video. Bunch of shiny new toys. I want to see some of them sparkle. I want to see Trey Palmer take something to the house, catch a deep pass, return a punt in a big way, even if there's a block in the back on the play. Let's see.
I don't think there'll be any punts.
Let's see. What
do you?
Maybe. I mean,
emphasis on special teams.
They don't really have those. They haven't had them off.
They haven't.
They don't want to get hurt.
Let's watch Trey Palmer sprint in a straight line. That's what I want to see. Let's watch Casey Thompson throw the ball, like make quick decisions. Hit the, as Sam harps on this point all the time, hit the top of your drop and make the throw right then. Let's see that. Let's see how does it look when it comes out of his hands, in Memorial Stadium. Let's see, even guys like I was combing through like people I'm watching, even like Heinrich Harburg was a guy we were watching last year. What has he done the last year? What is he looking like? How is he adjusting to the new system? Guys like that. And then even stuff like the minutia of, because Travis Fisher said yesterday, I'm like, by the end of the spring, I'm going to know who's playing. We're not making any of the decisions in the fall. So who's he rotating in? I'm watching that very closely. I'm taking him at his word. So stuff like that. I want to see the bright, shiny pieces, Anthony Grant, Trey Palmer, Casey Thompson, sparkle. I want to see them shine. I want to see them impress, do what they are, match what their, 40 times, 100-meter dash times say they can do. And I want to watch who's rotating in and out at what times.
Yeah, I want to see the offensive line move people the way that they say they've been doing it. The defensive players that they're going to be facing are not, Sue and Crick. So they should be able to do that if that's what they've been doing. They should be able to continue to do that in the game itself. So I'll DVR the game like anybody else, and then I'll watch that and I'll compare it to last year, and we'll see how they do. Like I don't want to overdo it. Trust but verify.
Right.
That's where I'm at. Like, okay, but let's see it. I agree with the Trey Palmer. That would be good. I'm intrigued to see all of the quarterbacks, not just Thompson, but all of them. How do they look? Remember last year we were just really fired up for Heinrich Harburg, and that was like a calendar year ago. A year later, he should be a year better, and we haven't really said his name at all because he's basically the number 4. Chuba Purdy is not brought here to be the 4th stringer. He might be. You never know. But what can Purdy do? What is he allowed to do? What is he limited to? And then I'm with Jimmy on the defensive backs. I think we're going to get kind of a show there. I think we could have a couple interceptions in the game. And, I think they feel fairly good about the talent. Now the talent needs to have a cohesiveness to it.
I'll add running back to that group. I think that's fascinating. I don't know that Nebraska's going to have a feature back again this year just because of how differently skilled all those guys are. But, what does Jacquez Yant look like now that he's off the Canes?
Does he go the right direction when the ball is snapped? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Great to see.
What's he look like when he's a little slimmed down? What does Anthony Grant look like in a Husker uniform? We haven't seen that yet. By all accounts, he's shifty and has some quick bursts. Well, let's see what that looks like between the tackles. Ramir Johnson, is he still that straight line speed guy, or has he added another element to his game too? I think those guys individually, and then how does the run game, even in its base formation, look under Mark Whipple? I mean, we probably have an idea based on what he did at Pitt, but it's probably going to be different from how Nebraska did it in the past, at least a little bit. So yeah. I think that's going to be fascinating too.
And quarterback runs don't mean much in the spring game because they all have green jerseys. So
right.
Right.
We won't see a lot of those, but I'll be curious to see how that goes too.
I would add watching the edges, watching the tackles go against the the Caleb Tanners of the world.
Butler, Gunnarsson.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a few plays blown dead. Like get to the they're in the spring game. They're obviously no sacks, can't tackle the quarterback.
Oh, they have sacks.
And they're gonna
touch sacks.
Right.
And they count them.
Right. But
they'll have five.
Let's see a few of those.
Yeah, you
Let's see a few of those. The offensive line is not whole. Much like the defensive line isn't whole, the offensive line isn't whole. So let's see some penetration off the edge. Let's see some heat, and on the other side of that, let's see how the quarterbacks respond to that heat.
I was just thinking about this today too. Like a lot of the things that we hoped to learn in the spring, we didn't for one reason or another. Either the competition we thought would be a competition didn't really turn out that way, like quarterback. Like that, I think we all kind of thought that there might be more of a competition there.
Not I.
Okay, not you. Or it's sort of an incomplete where there's a lot to learn about, say, the offensive line, but Corcoran's been out and Ben Hart's been out, and Prohaska's been out. So, like, what does that even look like? So we don't know. There's sort of an incomplete on that side, too.
There is. Yeah. What's interesting to me, and this is maybe a little bit of a side alleyway, is, okay, so 2 linemen were out, and that was Prohaska and Corcoran. Prohaska, we already know, is going to get right back in the left tackle. That's kind of where he belongs.
Mm-hmm.
Corcoran could probably play in multiple spots, but the question is Trent Hickson or Ethan Piper, more likely Hickson, become proficient enough at the center spot, become good enough at the center spot, that maybe you just don't try that transition in training camp? Because, again, center is different. Right? Like, it's a different and it's a more difficult position that Turner Corcoran has actually never really played.
Right.
When he was in high school, he didn't play center. When he's so far in college, he hasn't played center. And you can say, well, there was a few moments there where... No, he hasn't played it. He hasn't played it. And so, like, are you seriously going to tell me you're going to go into fall camp, training camp, because it's in the summer, preparing for a game in week 0... using a center who's never done it before? When you just had Trent Hickson, who was a backup center prior to this year, working all through camp? Like, is that really... And just for talent reasons? Because that's what it would be. It wouldn't be for experience.
Well, they've done it before. Cam Jurgens. I mean, he had some time to transition in the offseason, but that was the same sort of deal.
You're absolutely right. Exactly. But Corcoran doesn't even have that.
No, he doesn't.
And by the way, there were some growing pains there.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Right? So, like, this to me is a real question mark. Like, I just don't know how you can do it, and maybe they'll try to do it, but I just don't know how you have that ready for the first game. If you believe that the center position is as hard as it is, and I think it's a pretty tough one.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think there's probably one true center on their roster, and that's the guy they just brought in from New Jersey, Justin Evans-Jenkins. Like, everybody else is converted in some way. I don't believe Piper was a center in high school.
He was not.
Hickson has bounced around in his college career for sure. So, like, it's become a position that the staff has believed that they can coach, and kind of to your point about they feel like if this guy has the talent in the body, they'll make him a center as opposed to bringing somebody in who already has that experience.
High school football, and I love it. I love this about high school football. High school football is still about winning, like in ways that, no offense to AAU basketball, it isn't.
High school basketball is about winning.
Yeah,
away from the AAU circuit.
But there is no high school. There is no football equivalent to AAU basketball. 7-on-7 doesn't count. Not for linemen, it doesn't. Right. And so, if you're a high school football coach and you have an elite 6'4", 265-pound lineman, the chances of him playing center for your team is like nil. He's not going to play center.
He'll be a tackle.
He's going to be a tackle. And why? Because you're going to run off of his rear end. And you don't run off the center's rear end. So the challenge is that there are a few pure centers out there from high school, but there aren't that many of them, and they usually play for really good schools, and they're usually highly in demand. And so you inevitably have to transfer somebody to that spot, and that just takes time. And what I would see coming as time goes down the pike, you're going to see more coaches be more, what's the right word here? Intentional about developing centers in high school, and here's why. If a kid is 6'3" and 275 pounds in high school, and he plays center, he's going to get a scholarship because college programs are looking for guys who play center, and not just like tackle, FCS tackle, but like center. And so I think increasingly you're going to see coaches get better and better at saying, well, we're going to develop these guys at that level so that they have the skill set of being a good center. Because a lot of times your centers in high school are like 5'11", 217 pounds, and those are great dudes. And they're usually the toughest guys on the line. They're just tough as nails. But like when I was in high school, our center, Jason Nelson, was maybe like an NAIA D2 level lineman, toughest guy, but we had a guy that went to UNO on our line, Nick Prescott. He was a tackle, so You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that I could see it where it, where it changes as time goes on, and coaches are like, if you want a college scholarship, you should actually learn how to play center, because you can make a lot of big men tackles or guards, but center is a skill set. And so I think Trent Hickson's got kind of a leg up because he's been doing it for a while, and Corcoran has not. And Corcoran might be really versatile to do it, but I don't know.
Let's one more on the spring game. Let's talk about the D-line a little bit more. I know that's been an area of consternation, I suppose, this offseason. And with our last availability this week on Wednesday, I thought Ty Robinson really laid it out there. I mean, he said essentially they have 7 healthy defensive linemen right now, and that's including a walk-on or 2.
He said they've all done what, like 400 live reps?
plus live reps this spring, which is like a season's worth of reps, and even went so far as to say, like, we would welcome an addition like O'Shawn Mathis. He didn't say that, but they would welcome another body or 2 in that room. And so, I don't know what we can necessarily learn about that group on Saturday, but man, the more we've gone along, the more it feels like that's got to be the top priority in terms of adding some depth there. And if they can't even play a full format, a spring game format, because they don't have enough guys that are healthy, I mean, man, that's a red flag, yeah?
Ty Robinson. God, I love that guy's honesty.
Uh-huh.
He said he felt like he was in a 35-year-old man's body. That was hilarious. Chad Mays wrote that note up.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, if rarely does a player say that, and like that's a flashing light to his coaches. We're going to add a few more guys. We all took 400 reps. I was like, oh my God.
Remember, these are football players who are like at the end of. I remember after the Iowa game last year, there's a bunch of guys who have been battered all year, and they're all saying, "Oh, we'd be ready to play tomorrow." That's who you are supposed to be as a football player. You are trained to ignore your bumps and bruises, all the pain, aches and pains that come with a season. I've been doing this for 14 practices, and Ty Robinson's like, I'm done with this.
I'm a little surprised they didn't move an offensive lineman over there.
Yeah.
Aren't you a little bit?
Something.
They got guys.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, Brant Banks, for example, came to Nebraska as a D lineman. He could have maybe gotten some look over there.
This just surprises me that it was like, okay, well, this guy over here is not, you put your arm around a guy and say, hey, it doesn't look like you're in the top group, and second group is a little iffy too. You want to come over here and see if you can hold up against your your buddies. We didn't hear that. We didn't hear a story of like, well, what we did is we went and got a scholarship offensive lineman and brought him over here and let him battle.
And it felt like, nobody's caught off guard, but when you lose Damian Daniels and DeAndre Thomas decided to not come back, like those are 2 guys that
Jordan Riley was departure.
That would have been there. Jordan Riley, yep.
That was huge. I don't think the expectation there was he was going to walk away. Him coming back would have been huge for them.
And then
he didn't.
Of course, you lose your defensive line coach as well, and it's just been a position that's been in flux. And so, I mean, to me, that's where you got to start, because all the assistant additions and the way that they've upgraded a lot of skill areas, it doesn't matter if your lines are depleted.
Thomas
right?
didn't work out on pro day, did he?
No.
Where'd he transfer?
I think he's just done with football. He didn't want to go. I think he was just done.
Can we acknowledge,
Nebraska wanted him back.
Can we acknowledge the 12 months that Mike Dawson has been through here in Nebraska? Had to coach the special teams and the outside linebackers last year. Had to deal with all the reckoning that came with being the assigned special teams guy. Now he's coaching outside linebackers, defensive line. Easier to juggle both, but still dealing with more guys, and
It's
all your
so
defensive
true.
linemen are just your best defensive lineman
so
is like,
true.
hey man,
hair, right?
hey man,
He is a
I'm
good
dying
coach,
over
too.
here. I'm dying over here. So, yeah,
He's
shout
an
out Mike
NF
Dawson. He's
an
been through it.
NFL caliber coach.
Didn't have this problem with the Giants. That's what he's saying.
And at one point last year, like their punters could not punt in the right direction.
That was his thing, right? He took off his hat a couple weeks ago. Was it no hair or gray hair? I don't remember which.
There was still some hair there, but I think
He was losing hair, or was it graying hair?
losing it. Yeah.
Okay, losing hair. Okay.
He
Well,
had all his hair, I think. Is what
It was all there. Okay. Well, let's, I guess, touch on some other sports, too. We can talk a little men's hoops.
Let's do it.
Nebraska makes that assistant coaching hire in Adam Howard. What's the significance there?
What stood out to me, we met Adam on, what day was it, Tuesday? And what stood out to me about the press conference was that it was low-key. It was understated. Earlier last year, I think it was at opening night. I was looking for this clip this morning. I couldn't find it. I think I found the quote, though. They played, before they had the Star City intro, which was very cool, by the way, at the beginning of games, on the Jumbotron at PBA. They had a different video where it's Matt Abdelmassi at the microphone. He's saying, we're a destination for the best players in the world. And I think that's, I don't fault him for saying that. I think given his entry point and given his track record of success with Fred previously, it makes sense for him to say that and puff his chest out and stuff like that. It's a good thing that I did not feel that way. Didn't get the same vibe from this press conference. Like, if you put the dramatic music that they used for the Abdelmassi clip for the Adam Howard press conference, it wouldn't work, and that's a good thing. I don't know that that's intentional. I think it's just Adam Howard's a different guy, but you can't be doing the same thing. You can't be puffing your chest out after the tenure they've had. This is, hey, here's our guy, but I think they understand we need to prove something here. As far as Adam, the coach, what he brings to the table, he's got a funky matchup zone that apparently impressed Fred enough. They flew out.
Have you watched it?
I've watched some of it.
What is it?
It's designed to create turnovers and keep guys out of the paint.
No, what is it? Not what is it designed to do. What is it?
It's a zone. It's a 2-3 matchup zone, and it
Well, what is that?
It protects the paint. It forces teams to.
Do you realize most people do not know what that means?
Okay, so you're gonna have people pinching in towards the paint. The idea is to cut off access to the rim.
Okay.
And if you can't get to the rim, you can't create an advantage from the perimeter. It's harder to create open shots that way. Mm-hmm. Now, in pinching in to cut off that access to the rim, you might leave a few shooters open. But if you get enough length, the idea is that you can cover the ground necessary to knock those passes away and retreat in time to contest those jumpers. I think that is what first grabbed Fred. That's what he said. I mean, they flew in Howard a couple years ago to give a preseason presentation on his defense, and Fred said that he was really impressed at the amount of questions that he could answer. Like, I think Fred and the coaches were throwing at him, hey, what if we ran this against you? What if we ran this against you? And he answered those questions to a satisfactory manner.
And the zone helped Southern Miss win 56 games in 2 years.
Correct. They then had to vacate all those wins because of a NCAA investigation that Howard was involved in. I think, to me, though, I mean, the zone's great. If the zone works, the zone works. What the question and what will define this hire is that what kind of talent are you going to bring in? Because this is a roster that's lost a lot of production from last year, and there's not a lot of juice left. There's not a lot of playmaking juice. They got Sam Griesel, who was a nice player in the Summit League and put up some good numbers. They need more, though. Like, who else? Who are your other shot creators? Who are your other big-time scorers? They have a kid coming in this weekend, Antonio Reeves from Illinois State, who's drawing interest from all kinds of schools, from Kentucky to Duke to Texas Tech to Ohio State. Big, long list.
Score?
He's an important guy. Averaged 20-point-something points per game at Illinois State last year. So that's an important guy. He's visiting this weekend. But that's what will define this hire. The zone is nice.
And he was coming before Adam Howard.
They need players,
right? Or was he?
That was announced this week. I don't know exactly what role Adam played in that, but he didn't. We didn't know he was coming until this week. So that's what defines this hire to me. What kind of recruiter is Adam Howard? I've tried to discern. Like, they're obviously going to tell you, he's great. No new hire has ever been panned for anything, right? But combing through his bio, it seems like he's been more of a player development guy and X's and O's guy.
Right.
So
relative
that remains
to the schools he was at.
Right, relative to the schools he was at.
South Alabama is only going to get a certain caliber of player.
Now, to be fair, South Alabama had 7 Division I transfers last year, and a lot of them were from Power 5 schools. The LSU kid in there, Texas A&M kid in there.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know how much of that was Richie Riley, who's on a bunch of.
Yeah, they're a nice team. They were a nice team.
I don't know how much of that is Richie Riley, who's on a bunch of like 40 under 40 lists for head coaches, and how much of that was Adam Howard. But that's my summation of it.
Yeah, Richie Riley's probably headed for a P5 job that he has.
Yeah.
He has for 4 years, and then he makes one NCAA tournament, and then he ends up about 80 and 80, and then they let him go. That's what happened to John Pelfrey. He went to South Alabama, and then he went to Arkansas, and it didn't work. And that's just kind of what happens. That's what happened to Tim Miles. Let's be honest. Tim came up, had the one NCAA tournament, but went about 500, got fired. Now he's at San Jose State. So
the other thing about Howard's understated nature is that I think it's two things. The understated nature is easier to work with. I think that when you have a guy who is as brash and confident and self-assured as Abdul Massey was, like I'll go back to he was, but when it's not going well, that's hard to work with, particularly when, and Fred mentioned this multiple times in the press conference, particularly when you're only recruiting.
Right.
One of the big things that Fred said they were looking for is someone who could help them everywhere.
Right.
And Adam Howard presumably can do all things, right? So I think that this is not something that someone told me or something I've heard, but I can envision a scenario where you're in the middle of an 8-game losing streak with a recruiting class that was ranked whatever, and I call Matt, and I'm writing this Chucky Hepburn story, and he's saying, I don't think we're doing anything wrong in recruiting. I think we're all set. And the coaches in the room say, well, what does that say about us? Right? So I think that, again, no one told me anything about that, but you can connect the dots there and say maybe that's why it was time to change something, and maybe that's why it's a good thing that their new guy is a little more under the radar.
Everybody's on board. Ramel Lloyd, he's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Blaze Keto, who you wrote a great story about, we know he's coming.
Yes.
DeMarcus Lawrence is coming. Denham Dawson's already here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you just made a comment that they don't have a lot of playmaking juice. Is there but of the three, not Keita's a center, but of the three that I just named, Lloyd, Lawrence, and Dawson, is there a sneaky surprise in there?
If I was to pick one of those guys, I would say Ramel Lloyd. He's a guy who's probably had the ball in his hands. Him and Lawrence have had the ball in his hands the most of the new guys that are coming in. But I don't think it's fair to put those expectations on freshmen, particularly when you need this to turn around soon. Like It doesn't have to be 20 wins next year, but 14, 15. We need to see tangible progress here.
Is Reeves a shooter or
Reeves
is he a distributor?
So I was watching clips of him this morning. He is a little bit of everything.
Is he a 3?
He's 6'4". He's a guard.
He's 2.
So I think he would be a guy who takes a lot of the playmaking responsibilities. He's high volume 3-point shooter. He shot 39% from 3 last year on 5.9 attempts, which is very, 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 very good.
That's what you're looking for.
Now, he didn't shoot. I don't think he shot any better than like 31% in his career previous to that. So that's a pretty big jump. Maybe
Can he dribble?
Yes.
CJ Welcher can't really.
No, he can't dribble.
No offense to CJ.
No, Reeves is great at getting his shot off.
Okay.
He's got a really quick release. He's got a tight handle. I will say though, some of the clips I was watching included the misses. There's some ugly misses in there.
Sure.
Some of the misses are because he takes high difficulty shots. I mean, you think of the type of shots that Bryce was taking last year, very similar.
Yeah.
Step back threes, deep threes, off the dribble. And we saw it was expressly discouraged by the coaching staff, some of those shots. So that would be an interesting marriage. It also should be reiterated that Duke is on this guy's list. Kentucky's on this guy's list. I think Nebraska can offer more playing time and playmaking responsibility than those schools, but I don't know. Those jerseys have a lot of pull to them.
So let's just break this down for a second. Okay, so you have Griesel. He's there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Trey comes back, which we don't know, but that's a couple weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
Griesel, Trey, Reeves, Wilcher. Casey?
Are we talking in terms of
who's
what?
coming back?
Yeah,
in the
Casey.
backcourt.
Yeah.
Casey?
Yeah.
Lawrence,
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd,
Mm-hmm.
McPherson. Who do you add to that? I mean, that's 8 guys.
Well, I think McPherson is still some time away from being able to.
Sure, but like you have finite number of scholarships.
I mean, I don't think Trey is coming back.
Okay. So then it becomes okay. So Griesel,
Yeah.
Reeves.
Yep.
Griesel, Reeves. That's your point and your 2.
Yep.
Griesel can play other positions,
Yes.
but Griesel and Reeves.
And
Wiltshire.
you can also slide a lot. Like CJ played power forward for
Yeah.
long stretches last year.
I'm
I don't
sure
think
they
that
hope
was.
that's
I don't think
not
that was ideal.
Yeah.
But like you can slide a lot of these guys around. Like they're going to play. I think they're going to play a decent amount of 3-guard lineups.
3 guards with Walker and Keita.
Particularly because you want that. You know, Fred mentioned
Sure.
that Walker and Keita could be playing together.
Okay,
you
so
need
those are the
guys
3.
who can dribble.
So Griesel, Reeves, Wiltshire. Those are your 3 guards, top 3 guards. Then Casey, then Lloyd, then Lawrence, then and then
Corn
McPherson.
Yep.
Dawson's a
Wing.
wing.
Yep.
He's 6'6", 6'7".
Yep.
Okay. And then you've got Walker. Kohenens, he's sticking, right? He's going to stay. They think he's okay.
Yep. Again, a ways away, but we'll be around.
Keita. What other pieces do you think they could add? And then we agree that Latmane's not coming back.
I don't think Latman's coming back.
I
don't think him or Trey are coming back.
I don't think Latman's
So, I mean, we just named
I've heard other things about. I've heard Trey is
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I
Sam made a waffly sign there.
No, like
May or may not.
Could or
Right.
may or may not.
Right.
There's an NIL deal out there for Trey. Maybe there is for Lat. I don't know. And maybe Lat's a better player when he doesn't have to do some of the things defensively that he was doing.
Sure.
But what do you add to that? Again, finite scholarships. Somebody's got to go if you're going to add more. They don't have a bunch of guys to add.
Right now they're at 13. So if we say Trey and Lat aren't coming back and we slide Reeves in there, that leaves one spot. I would
12.
I would throw a shooter in there. I think right now we have Jamarcus.
Brian Bach's a 4. I forgot about
Brian Bach. Yeah. I promise they're 13. That's where we're at right now. We don't have to count them all, but
No.
we're at 13.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, Brian
I
Bach
didn't want
is
people
a
to
key piece of the equation as well.
Yeah.
I would add a shooter in
now.
there. Yeah,
Reeves would be 14, which means they know one player's leaving.
for sure.
I mean, you think 2 are leaving.
I do. So
Which
I would
leave one left.
throw a shooter in there. Whatever position he plays doesn't matter.
Okay.
Really, but someone who can add some more floor spacing because you don't know a lot of these freshmen. Denham Dawson, it's not what he's known for. I don't think that's what Ramel Lloyd is known for. Jamarcus Lawrence, it is. CJ Wiltshire, it is. I think
they
it
need
would
one
help
of
to have a
these-
floor spacer.
I think they need one of these guys, Lawrence, Dawson, or
Pop.
Lloyd.
Sure. I agree
And
with
guess
that.
what? Nebraska's kind of due.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't mean that. Bryce McGowan's was what was advertised. They're due to have a guy that they didn't know was going to be good.
I think
They're due for that. It's been
no
a
doubt
long
about that.
time,
I think Wilhelm
hasn't it?
Years.
Wilhelm offensively didn't pop the way that they envisioned him popping last year in the 10 games that he played. He's got the potential to be
He's manic. Is
a game-changing
manic?
type player for them.
Is he manic?
We're
talking
He's-
about the guy from North
Carolina, the bearded guy. He has. I see why you draw the
same
comparison.
size.
I see why you draw the comparison.
Similar players.
Wilhelm is more skilled than Brady Manic. He can do more off the bounce. He's a better passer. He's a more versatile defender.
If they had won the national championship, just by the way, that might have been the worst national title team ever. And that's and I was rooting for him.
Yeah.
That's more of a reflection on what's happened in the sport. Because there have been, Villanova was an 8, I think, back in the day.
That was the last 8
They
to
had
win.
they had friggin' Paul Presley and God, I can't remember the other guy's name. Played in the NBA for 15 years. Ed something. That team was way better. I mean, that team that North Carolina put on the floor, they were the hardest working group of guys I've ever seen.
I like me some Caleb Love.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to play in the league, right?
Yeah.
I guess they call it the league.
They do.
The association.
It's weird that they do that.
They do.
It is the association.
But that was not it. I mean, that was a short bench. That was like 6 or 7 guys. That would have been the worst national title
Caleb
team.
Love's 5-star recruit.
I know.
Yeah.
But it would have been not one of the worst national title team
Sure.
ever. You can go back like 10 years and I don't know.
Well,
You
8
go back
seeds
to
don't
like-
win. 8 seeds don't win. So
they don't.
That
But
does
like,
a lot of your
there's
work
been
for
some
you.
8 seeds. I mean, shoot, North Carolina in what it was at 91, 92 was an 8 seed and beat number
Right.
1 seed
Kentucky.
Oklahoma.
Kentucky was an 8 seed when they had Julius Randle,
and that was a joke 8 seed.
Right.
But North Carolina was an 8 seed 25 years ago, and they had frickin' Rick Fox and Hubert Davis, and I mean they were unbelievable. So this was just not a. I was stunned to see them in the national title game, and they were pretty dominant up until the second half against KU. They were the better team on the floor every time they took it. So anyway, as it relates to Nebraska, I'll just be curious. I think they just need a guy to pop. They need one of these three new guys to be just like, oh, what a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, come in and provide immediate firepower.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like 15 a game, but they've talked up Denim Dawson. Is Denim Dawson a guy?
I don't think offensively he's that guy,
but he can rebound or something.
Yeah, he can defend. He'll play hard. He'll get deflections, rebound, that sort of stuff.
C.J. Wilcher was as advertised.
Sure.
I think he played about as good as they could have hoped he would have played. By the end of the year, I thought he was a pretty good asset.
Great shooter.
And that's kind of what they brought him in to do.
Exactly.
The problem is too many of the players they brought in never...
No, they did not. Latman, elite shooter, they said 80 whatever three-pointers that he made in a row during a summer workout didn't materialize.
And he got beat up defensively. He did a lot of other things, but Casey's not.
Casey didn't. Yeah, Casey was not the world-beating... If Casey continues on his current trajectory, the Japanese Steph Curry nickname will be one that lives in infamy for sure.
Didn't he win a medal though? I mean, that was pretty cool.
I don't think did he win a medal?
3-on-3.
He was in the 3-on-3.
That was everybody saw that and maybe got misled by what he might be able to be capable of. But anyway, we've talked plenty of basketball. Back to spring football for a second.
Yeah.
It's going to be really something to not watch Adrian Martinez. It's been a long time. I remember the first spring game that he was at, 2018, and he sparkled. And it was at that moment, I remember the Monday Rewind that I wrote after that. I'm like, you do not need to go after Joe Burrow. I wrote that. Which is why I could never walk it back, because I don't believe in walking back opinions that I had at the time, because at the time I thought that was the right thing. And I still do. Like, knowing what you knew about Joe Burrow at that time, knowing what you knew about what you just saw from Adrian, you had to roll with what you had. And I remembered writing, look, if you go after Joe Burrow, you're going to lose Tristan Gebbia. And I remember writing that. And that was like 4 years ago now. And again, I believe, I remember that. It's going to be so odd to not watch him. He just won't even be there. And that was such an abrupt departure. It'll be so odd to see Casey Thompson be the number one quarterback. Because I watch a lot of Texas football. I mean, I watch a lot of football in general, but I watch a lot of the classic teams. Texas, UCLA, USC, Oklahoma. I watch that stuff all the time. And so I've watched a lot of Casey Thompson, from the Alamo Bowl a couple of years ago to lots of games last year. Mm-hmm. It's going to be weird to see Casey Thompson in a Husker uniform. He was kind of a Texas quarterback. So it'll be interesting. That's going to be odd to me, It'll be interesting to watch some of these new receivers and what they can do.
Yeah, non-Trey Palmer division. Who are we looking for?
Among the receivers?
Yeah. I mean, Omar is an obvious one. I think Alante Brown.
Oh, Alante.
I want to hear Alante because I want to see Alante match the praise he's been getting this spring.
He hasn't lived up to the...
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm glad that he's turned a corner here in the spring, but he's not. He had a play against Northwestern in 2020. It was on an end around. Or was that against Iowa? That was against Iowa. And you're like, oh, this guy's got some ability. And we just never really seen it again. Like, he's not... He kind of got lost in the wash last year. By the way, Will Nixon, Washington. Will Nixon's a good player. I am still baffled by that did not work. I thought Nixon was the better of the two. But Brown is still here. Yeah, him. Borkircher, AJ Rollins. I'm legitimately interested to see those two. And I think...
Oliver Martin.
Yeah, what Mickey Joseph said yesterday about Oliver Martin is probably the truest thing that's ever been said about Oliver. There's no question about his physical ability. And, I've talked to people around Oliver, too. It's never been a question. It's always this question of, does he believe in himself? Is he confident? Does he... all that. I mean, Martin has all of the ability in the world. So there's no question about his ability. He's as talented as probably anybody there not named Trey Palmer.
So for in this setting, Oliver Martin makes a couple of 25-yard catches,
think
that's
he
huge
could.
for your confidence.
Yeah.
Huge for your confidence in
Yeah.
front of fans.
Yeah, he's got to stay healthy. I mean,
Right.
so, but yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see the defensive backs. I think people will be impressed if you're into watching this kind of thing and you watch the athletic movement of the defensive backs. I think you're going to like what you see. The movements, the athletic movements of those guys are good. I'm concerned about the athletic movements of the defensive line and maybe the offensive line. Like I just want to see what the athletic movement looks like.
What do you mean by athletic movement?
Pursuit, the ability to get off blocks, the ability to peel back and make plays, to shed. So like, in a pass rush, to be able to get a guy off you, making athletic movements, not just being hard to move, but putting all of your rock strength together and like coordinating that with like movement. And of course, the gold standard, the highest watermark is Ndamukong Suh, the most athletic football player for his size that I've ever seen. And Suh had a Rhodes Scholarship in athletic movement. So he was really strong, but Suh could move. He could just move. He could run all over the place. He could get up and block passes with one hand and catch them, like just movement. And then Carlos and Khalil Davis, movement. They were athletic. And Malik Collins with athletic. Do they have athletic guys? The guy that I think actually has that is Jalen Weaver. The problem is, does he weigh what he needs to weigh? And does he know the playbook? Because you watch you turn on his tape and you're like, now there's athletic movement. The nose guard that they're, he doesn't have as much athletic movement. He's impossible to move. But you want movement. You want you guys to be able to, in a short area, to be able to go, and all of a sudden they're in the backfield.
Well, it kind of speaks to what the coaches said about, I think they were talking about Nash Huntmacher specifically, but like guys who have the physical strength and the ability, but like hasn't always translated into football movements, right? Like your bench numbers are there, your measurables are good, but like it just doesn't translate. So maybe this is that time for those guys. I think Weaver definitely falls into that. Raekwon Buckley probably falls into that. We got to talk to Mosai Newsome, who looked. I mean,
He looks good.
He looks the part, but again, it's like, does that translate to that football component?
I think he has the movement piece. So what Dawson said about him, and usually when you hear for clues, is he's like he needs to play square to the line of scrimmage and play through his guy a little bit more and stop trying to get around guys. Which he needs more Nash Huntmacher. Like he needs to be able to just be a rock. And to me, that's the biggest question, guys, is do they have athletic movement linemen? Cam Jurgens was a great example. I mean, an unbelievable athlete.
Yeah.
And will probably, if he can figure it all out as a center in the NFL, he's going to be there a long time. He had a preferred visit to the Broncos this week, by the way. That's a big deal. They don't do a lot of those. They have an offense where it's a good chance that he's going to play in Denver.
Well, I'm a Bronco fan, so that would be fun to see.
And we'll get into the NFL draft more here in the next couple of weeks. That'll be
Cam
fun.
visited the Ravens this week, right? Yeah.
He did.
Yep.
He did.
It's a good place to go.
Well, that defense is really aggressive, and Cam is a good fit for that. Because the thing I would say Cam's not great at, and he even said this, which I appreciated, is playing off coverage and transitioning back down and making tackles. Like giving too much cushion. Now you tell him to get up in a guy's face, and Baltimore takes a lot of risks with their defense. If you tell him to get up in a guy's face and cover the hell out of somebody, that Cam can do that.
Yeah.
It requires a real man to do that because it's the most lonely and aggressive job on a defense. But
And the numbers that he ran at the combine
yeah.
are key for that sort of role too.
But that's the kind of corners they've always wanted because that's just the way they play defense. They're going to bring guys from everywhere, and they're going to ask their corners to kind of be out on an island. And that Cam excels in that. Like that's where he excels, playing in like a mousetrap zone defense, which can also work and does work as the Patriots. Is not. I wouldn't describe as his strength.
He's got that toughness. He lost that tooth before the Senior Bowl and kept pushing through. I can touch real quick on baseball this weekend. Nebraska's playing Rutgers, part of the festivities here. And it's a big weekend for Nebraska because the further they go, they're getting close to the halfway point in the baseball season. Their RPI is well above 100, and when you get to this point in the season and your RPI is in that kind of shape, what that tells you is your chances of being an at-large qualifier are pretty small. So barring some kind of just crazy run down the stretch, what it means for Nebraska is it's going to be all about winning the Big Ten or finishing real close to the top to have any chance to do that. And Rutgers is tied for first right now in the league. They've won 7 in a row. Rutgers baseball is 22-6 right now,
with a series loss to UNO.
They're the metrics that I always look at, the 3 parts of a good team: what's your scoring average, what's your fielding percentage defensively, and what's your earned run average. It's not all encompassing, but that gives you a pretty good sense about how those teams do. They're top 20 nationally in all those categories, albeit against a pretty weak non-conference schedule to this point. But it's a sneaky big weekend for Nebraska because Rutgers doesn't have the name cachet of Michigan or Maryland right now. But like again, if you drop this series and Nebraska lost to Omaha on Wednesday night, like you just don't have much margin for error left. So to me, this is becoming sort of like last year. You pretty much have to, in that league-only season that they played last year, you have to contend in the league and to have a home series against a team that has good stats, but we don't exactly know how good they are. It's a huge weekend for Nebraska. If they lose it, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah. Tough loss last night. I get the impression that UNO and Creighton care more about it than Nebraska does. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it feels like
about the in-state.
Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. I get the sense that whether Nebraska wins those games or they don't, that makes UNO's season. Nebraska's, and it's not always fair because if Nebraska wins, everybody expected it to happen. If they lose, well, then
it's a no-win for Nebraska, really. Yeah.
Well, they've got to stop looking at it like that, and that's the hard part. I think one of the biggest challenges with this program, and certainly Nebraska basketball should never ever look at Creighton basketball like that, and they don't. No. I don't think, because obviously Creighton's a far better program at this point. So that is a win-win situation for Nebraska. That's changed over the years, but yeah. I think there has to come a point within a plethora of Nebraska men's programs where beating the teams that you're supposed to beat is actually a point of bigger pride than it sometimes appears to be. I saw it way too much with losing to Western Illinois last year in basketball. You can't just roll the ball or the baseball or the basketball out on the field or the court or the football field and think you're going to just beat bad teams or teams you think you're supposed to beat.
The Creighton part's interesting because 15 years ago, Creighton volleyball was nothing. Nebraska had won 70-some, and they were 70-some and 0 against them. I think they had some ridiculous record against Creighton volleyball, and that now they're a top 25 perennial team.
Nebraska still never lost to them.
Creighton volleyball, well, sure, but it's a bigger match now than it was. Mm-hmm. You think of Creighton women's
John Cook
basketball.
would not allow that. That's my point. It's he doesn't allow that.
Yeah.
UNO almost beat Nebraska last year in volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
That was the low point of the season, and they got a lot better real quick after that, because that would have been John said it right after the game. They wanted it more than us.
Mm-hmm.
He was very clear about that.
Yeah, women's basketball, same team. What Creighton just did, that can't be a game that you just assume.
Oh,
a lot's changed in that regard, and I think baseball's the same way. Creighton's going to regionals. UNO, they might be the best baseball team in the state with the way that they're playing right now.
The records say they are. They are. The record says they are.
Mm-hmm.
The teams that they've beat says they are, and they're 3-1 against in-state teams. I don't know what evidence there would be that they're not, other than Creighton's got a winning record against bad teams. But I don't know. I don't know what else to You thought that the baseball team was going to be able to not be this, but they are too. They've lost. They lost to 22-4 to Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
Yeah, right. And that was I think that was a circumstantial thing in a lot of ways. The end, they were on fumes, bullpen wise, at the end of their time.
Should there be a circumstance where that happens, though?
When you don't have arms.
That's well,
If you're
and that
playing
does
7
happen.
games in 8 days, and your starter leaves in the first inning 3 times. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
I get it.
Your arms are just shot at that point. That does happen.
I get it.
The offense is the thing that continues to baffle. I mean, there's just no clutch hitting. They don't have speed. They haven't taken a lot of walks. It's just they had flashes against Ohio State last weekend, but the pitching for the Buckeyes just isn't very good. So Rutgers is, I think, a much more accurate test of where Nebraska is, because they do. I mean, I think they're right near the top in the Big Ten in ERA. They brought in a couple grad transfers from lower level divisions that have done well there too. So that should be a good litmus test of where they are. Well, I think that's what we have for today. We're going to be back early next week. I think we're going to have a Tuesday pod breaking down the spring game. Finally, having a chance to look at some things, talk to some folks, and just kind of break some stuff down firsthand. So that's going to be refreshing. We'll talk to you guys then. Enjoy the game, the Masters, opening day, whatever your jam is. Enjoy that in the next few days. Thanks.